show you how to create a rabbet. This is slightly different than the longer video I showed because I just this semester changed how I'm going to do this. It should work more accurately and be easier for you to get your work done right. This is not quite 15 inches long, but this represents your 15-inch board that you're going to be using on your project. You'll start out by taking one of your other boards, putting it down on the edge of your project and drawing a line. Now I recommend that this end of your board be the end that you cut as opposed to the end that I cut. Okay, because that way, because you're going to be sanding it off the end later on, so if this is slightly off square, it's not really going to matter. Okay? All right, that way. Now, once you've drawn that line, you're going to take a square and draw lines down the side. Please see to it that he has room to see what I'm doing. I just need you out of the video. Okay, so you draw a square line down the sides as well. Okay? Once you've done that, I recommend highly that you put this line on the inside of your table as you clamp it down in the vise. I need you to scooch that way so that she can come in and get a close up view. Now, I'm going to put this, first of all, this thing has to be set to exactly 3/8 of an inch. Okay? Not approximately, but you need to check it too. Don't assume that the last person who used this left it at 3/8 of an inch. It needs to be at exactly 3/8 of an inch. Okay? Now, this thing right here where the metal is, that goes right up against the back of your thing. Not like this, not like that, not like that, which I see all day long, people doing this. It needs to be right up against that edge. Okay? Notice that it is up against the back, not where you've drawn the line. Okay? Notice also that I'm not going to want this nail to be pointing straight down. I want it at an angle so that I can draw it back across here to draw a nice, clean, straight line. Okay? I don't want to make this really deep. Okay? I just want to score it and kind of scratch it. And then I'm going to go a little bit deeper. Just enough that I can get my fingernail in there. Now I've noticed that people have been digging down really deep. And if you do that, you're going to round over this edge here, and that's going to make it a little less than your desired measurement in the end. So just leave it to the point where you can get your fingernail in there, and there's a nice, clean, straight line there. Okay, and it's going to be a cleaner line if you do it slowly over several different times, rather than trying to get it all in one shot. Now I'm going to do the same thing on the sides. Once again, making sure that I'm right up against that side. And on this side, which you should be able to see better with the camera. As I put that line right there. Okay? Now, once this line has been created and I can get my fingernail in it all the way around, I'm going to cut it. Which is the same as you were doing before when you were cutting your boards, except the fact you no longer need the guide board, the sacrifice boards underneath. You don't need them because you're not going to be cutting all the way through. Okay? Once again, I'm going to grab a guide block, look for the word top, and I'm going to point the arrows towards my line. I'm going to use a sacrifice board down here just to not dent my wood. And I'm going to clamp this thing up. Once again, everything is tight. Nothing is moving. Okay? Now I'm going to take my board again. I'm going to put that down here. I'm going to use a mallet. Just tap it over about that much. Can you get a good look at that? Okay? It's just a little bit of extra. Maybe around a 1/16 of an inch of extra wood right there. And it is completely square. Definitely square. Definitely a little bit of extra right there. This is the part we're going to sand off later. Okay? And then you can start cutting. You should be familiar with this step. Except for the fact that now you need to make sure that you're staying flat the whole time, because you don't want to be cutting at any weird angles. I'm trying to cut down to that line without overcutting. But I'm not there until I can touch this side and that side at the same moment. Often people are cutting like this, where they're going up and down like that, and in the end it's not cut all the way down in the center, and if you chisel away later it's going to be a problem. So you have to wait until you can touch both sides at the same time. I also highly recommend that before you unclamp your work, you come and get me and say, Mr. Olson, will you check my cut? I'm going to push down on it and ask you, can you see both sides? Is it deep enough both sides? And you can check that. And if I approve, then you can unclamp your work. Now I'm going to put the cut side towards me in the vise. I'm going to grab one of these chisels. I'm going to put the bevel towards me. So the flat side without the bevel, see how there's a bevel there? Bevel goes towards me, flat side away from me. And I'm going to chisel away half of the wood. Okay, I want to point out something on this wood. Can you come in close here? You'll notice as I'm chiseling this, it's chiseling at an angle because of the grain of the wood. The grain of your wood is going to be different than the grain of my wood. There's no way of knowing exactly what it's going to be, which is why at this point it comes down to a matter of individuality, and you have to somehow problem solve and figure out a way to get your work to be as clean as possible and match the rubric as well as possible. Okay, you can back up. So I removed about half. Now I'm going to remove another half. By the way, yes, I should be wearing my safety glasses. And I should also be working a little slower. Okay, I'm going to move again in about half again. Now here's what people do when they do it wrong. They're 1, 2, and 3, and then they twist the last moment. You got to be careful to not move at the last moment. Okay, now that I'm about a 1/16 of an inch away, I'm going to try to work very carefully here on that edge, on that corner. And now I'm actually going to go right into that groove. I'm going to try to cut right along that line, which is usually easier than that. It was more difficult for me because of the grain that we were talking about earlier. Okay, you want to have a nice clean line right here. And this is what you really need to do when it comes to making your board sit in square. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. You can stay where you are, it's fine. Okay, so now this looks good over here on this side and good on this side. So all I have to deal with is the stuff in the middle. And the stuff in the middle is less important. It just needs to kind of get out of your way. It is true that if you go too deep, and notice the fact that because I scribed that line, the chisel sits right down in there. So you should be able to hit that line well. Oops, and yet I did not. See that? That's going to result in a gap because I'm talking too much while I'm working. hopefully that will serve as a example of what not to do. Okay, now I'm going to have to come in here below the line to get rid of that wood. A lot of this stuff I have to do because of the way that the grain was running on my board. Most of your work should come out to be easier than this. Okay. Once I remove it, then I need to fit my board in there. And I need to ask myself, what do I need to make this work with the rubric better? This actually came out pretty well right away. I think there's some small little things I can do in the bottom to really make that a little bit better. One last little bit right here, I think. And this is where I really want you to gain the most out of my class, is the individual problem solving of making your work look as good as that. That's a really good looking rabbit, except for obviously that little gap, which happened because I wasn't being very careful. But nice clean line here. This line right here and the line over here is what's really going to hold this thing square. So you really want to be careful about these two lines over here. Okay? You need to read that's the end of the video. Thank you very much for watching.